The 1,970 seconds and 1,980 seconds were a time when horror films didn't just scare, they disturbed, disoriented, and defied all cinematic norms. These decades birthed some of the most experimental opening sequences ever shot in genre history, but not all of them survive. Behind the flickering grain of VHS tapes and the smoky reels of lost 35mm prints lies a strange truth. Many horror films we thought we knew once began very differently. Before the studio edits, before the test audience reactions, before the moral board stepped in, these films had other openings. Openings that were darker, stranger, or simply too disturbing to remain. Some were yanked moments before premiere night, their reels quietly destroyed or locked away in vaults. Others were altered mid-production, replaced with tamer introductions that dulled the edge of what could have been. And in some cases, the only evidence of these original intros comes from crew testimonies, obscure production notes, or audience memories that flicker like ghosts, half-remembered but never fully erased. Why do these lost intros matter? Because the beginning of a horror film is everything. It's the moment of impact, the tone setter, the silent contract with the audience that says, "This is the nightmare you're about to enter." When that promise is altered or erased, the film itself becomes a ghost incomplete, haunted by what it once was. And strangely, in 2025, when horror has become more sanitized, more algorithmic, those forgotten openings feel more radical than ever. They weren't just scenes, they were statements. And their absence leaves a silence that screams louder than blood-curdling soundtracks. So tonight, let's dig beneath the surface of what you think you remember. Let's uncover the intros that were never meant to survive. These are 15 horror films that opened with scenes no one remembers because they were cut. Number 1. The Other, 1972. The Other is a film soaked in grief, duality, and repression, and once had an opening that made its true horror explicit. The original scene, removed before wide release, depicted Niles and Holland, the twin brothers, playing a game in a locked attic. The game? Taking turns pretending one of them didn't exist. One would hide in the dark, the other would narrate aloud, "I am alone. I was always alone." This game was scripted and shot, but test audiences reportedly reacted with confusion and discomfort. The studio panicked, fearing the twist would be spoiled. So the scene was pulled, and the film now opens with pastoral calm sunlight, birdsong, innocent. But that original intro was the key. It didn't spoil the twist, it earned it. It hinted that the darkness wasn't something that arrived. It had always lived there, in the attic, in the imagination of a lonely child. Some early VHS pressings in Europe are said to include a portion of the scene, but no official restoration has reinserted it. And so, The Other remains a masterpiece, half-remembered. Brilliant, but afraid of its own beginning. Number 2. Pin, 1988. Pin is already one of the most quietly terrifying films ever made, a tale of psychological decay, familial silence, and projection. But its original intro was far more clinical than creepy. The first scene, according to the shooting script, was set in a sterile medical classroom. A life-size anatomical dummy sits at the front. A doctor speaks to it softly, explaining human emotion with no students present. Then the camera pans. The dummy's eyes move. The producers insisted the scene be scrapped. They wanted the horror to unfold slowly, not start with a surreal gut punch. But the deleted intro redefined the dummy not as a tool, but as a presence, a character, possibly sentient. Without it, Pin becomes an extension of Leon's madness. With it, there was doubt, uncertainty, a sliver of belief that maybe, just maybe, the dummy had its own thoughts. Years later, the director admitted regret. "We killed our best ghost before the story began." And what is Pin, if not a ghost in plastic form? Number 3. Possession, 1981. Possession opens in chaos, a man returning home, a marriage in ruins, a woman unraveling. But it was once supposed to open in silence. Director Andrzej Żuławski shot a now-lost intro where Anna walks alone through a Berlin U-Bahn tunnel, surrounded by silent commuters who won't meet her eyes. She stops, looks at the wall, and begins to cry, not from sadness but confusion. The sequence was removed after international distributors pushed for urgency, a faster descent into hysteria. What they didn't understand was that possession wasn't about what happened. It was about why it couldn't be understood. Żuławski later described the intro as the breath before collapse, the moment when Anna still wanted to hold on but didn't know how. Without it, the film opens mid-scream, which is powerful but also jarring. Cinematographer Bruno Newton once claimed that the lost footage had no script. It was purely instinctive, improvised. It was meant to disorient emotionally, not narratively. Some reels from the original cut are rumored to be locked in a French archive, unlabeled and undigitized. Whether they'll ever surface is unknown, but the absence is palpable. Possession doesn't need more madness. It needed that moment of quiet, that final glimpse of a woman before she was consumed. Number 4. The Sender, 1982. Before Scanners and Firestarter, there was The Sender, a cerebral horror film about a young man whose dreams invade reality. But the studio never wanted cerebral. That's why they cut the original opening, a sequence showing the protagonist submerged in water, eyes open, screaming silently, not drowning, just suspended. That intro was abstract and unsettling. It lasted 2 minutes, no dialogue, just water, distorted sounds, and brief flashes of faces: his mother, a church, fire, a collage of trauma without explanation. Test audiences didn't know what to make of it. Paramount panicked. They cut it and replaced it with a more direct scene, the young man attempting suicide in public. Easier to understand, easier to market. But that change reframed everything. The suicide scene made him a victim. The water scene made him a transmitter already dangerous, already broken. The loss of ambiguity diluted the film's premise. In 2013, fragments of the underwater footage appeared on a European DVD, extra grainy, color-warped, terrifying, but not complete. Some films dream too big, and when they do, the first thing to go is always the beginning. Number 5. Next of Kin, 1982. Next of Kin has been hailed as Australia's answer to The Shining, but few remember that it once had an intro that echoed Kubrick's Dread. The original version opened with the protagonist, Linda, as a child, wandering the halls of the Montclair retirement home in the dead of night, long before she was meant to return as an adult. The sequence was shot in near silence, with only the hum of fluorescent lights and Linda's shallow breathing. She finds a door slightly ajar. Inside, a bed, empty, a wheelchair spinning slowly. Then cut to black. The scene was removed by international distributors who felt it gave away too much. Ironically, it did the opposite. It cast the entire story in a loop, a cycle of inherited trauma. The cut intro gave Linda's return to Montclair deeper meaning. It wasn't just a visit, it was a homecoming to fear. Director Tony Williams acknowledged the cut years later, calling it a necessary death to sell the film abroad. No known footage of the original opening exists today, but in the film's echoing corridors and mirrored halls, that scene still lingers, a memory we're not allowed to have. Number 6. Eyes of Fire, 1983. Eyes of Fire is already a fever dream of early American folklore, all moss, madness, and religious dread. But it once began with a moment of stillness. In the original cut, the film opened with a slow shot of trees hanging upside down. Birds flew backward. A girl walked into frame and whispered, "It's already inside you." That surreal intro was meant to disorient, not explain. It signaled the land was wrong before any words were spoken. But producers demanded clarity, so instead, the final version begins with a courtroom scene, forcing exposition before atmosphere. The lost intro lingered. You could feel it in the rest of the film, a sense that something had been torn out. The strange rhythms, the unnatural edits, they all point back to an origin that no longer exists. In a rare interview, editor Richard Sands confessed, "We started in the nightmare, then they made us wake up and start again." Footage of the lost intro remains elusive. A fan restoration using stills and script fragments exists online, but the original film elements were likely discarded in a storage purge. In a movie about haunted wilderness and erased histories, maybe the missing intro is part of the curse. Number 7. The Baby, 1973. Few films are as strange or as disturbing as The Baby, but even it had boundaries, apparently. According to archived reviews and cast recollections, the original opening scene showed the titular baby alone in a dark room, standing, not crawling, and watching cartoons with the sound turned off. That one image of a grown man in a diaper silently staring at flickering cartoons was allegedly so unsettling that preview audiences walked out. The scene was immediately cut. In the final version, we meet Baby much later, in a carefully staged family setting where the grotesque is buffered by fake domesticity. But that first intro changed everything. It implied awareness. It made you question the setup from the beginning. Was Baby truly mentally infantile? Or was he pretending, controlled, punished? By removing the scene, the film lost its central tension. What remained was camp, exploitation, and cult status. But those who saw the intro never forgot it. One critic wrote, "That opening didn't just shock, it accused." Number 8. Alice, Sweet Alice, 1976. Before the masks, the murders, and the Catholic dread, Alice, Sweet Alice was supposed to begin with silence and then screaming. The original opening featured Alice waking up in her bedroom, her mouth sewn shut in a dream, her eyes bulging. She tries to scream but can't. She watches her younger sister smile at her from the hallway, holding the needle. The studio demanded it be cut. Too violent, too symbolic, too much. Instead, we start at church, during communion, quiet, respectable, hollow. That lost intro wasn't just shock, it was foreshadowing. It told you everything you needed to know about Alice, her inability to speak her pain, her sister's role in her repression, and the horror of being blamed for what you can't control. Director Alfred Soule later said he fought for the scene but was overruled. The footage has since disappeared, not lost, discarded. The irony? The film was accused of anti-Catholic sentiment anyway, so they cut the most honest part and got punished just the same. Number 9. Don't Go to Sleep, 1982. In its original test screening form, Don't Go to Sleep opened with a quiet, jarring image, a single shoe lying in the middle of a burned mattress. No music, no context, just smoke, embers, and stillness. Then a whisper, "She's not gone." That's it. That intro was removed before the film aired on television. Executives at ABC deemed it too abstract for a primetime audience. Instead, the final cut begins with a happy suburban family moving into a new house, masking the psychological horror to come. But that original scene set the tone for something much colder, a story not about ghosts, but guilt. The burned mattress belonged to the daughter who died. The shoe, her sister's, a symbol of shared trauma, of complicity. Without it, the film plays more like a haunted house tale than the slow psychological unspooling it was meant to be. Years later, one of the editors admitted the original scene was brilliant but isolating. It didn't invite you in, it shut the door behind you. Only a few bootleg work prints have ever surfaced, and even those are incomplete. What we're left with is a sanitized nightmare, like being told a scary story that skips the part that actually kept the teller awake. Number 10. Messiah of Evil, 1973. Messiah of Evil is already disjointed, a surreal fever, dream of coastal horror. But its original intro might have made it even stranger. Early drafts and cast interviews describe a missing scene, a narrator, unseen, calmly describing a dream in which blood rains on a town that doesn't exist. The narration was paired with images of still, empty streets shot with a red filter and no ambient sound. This sequence was replaced with a more conventional flash-forward of a man slashing a throat, abrupt, violent, and easier to sell. But the original intro was designed to prepare the viewer for disorientation. It promised dread, not gore. That narration has been lost, the voice actor uncredited, the audio reel never found. But a production assistant claimed the cut was ordered by the distributor at the very last moment. They feared it made the film too slow and too European, which is ironic, because Messiah of Evil was never meant to be American horror. It was meant to drift, to erode, to bleed in silence. Some rare international cuts allegedly contain fragments of the original sequence, but none are confirmed. The dream remains spoken of, but never heard. What happens when you erase the first breath of a nightmare? You still fall asleep, but the dream forgets its shape. Number 11. Jennifer, 1978. Often dismissed as a Carrie knockoff, Jennifer is more than telekinetic snakes and high school revenge. Originally, the film opened with a flashback. Jennifer as a child, watching her pet snakes writhe in pain after her father tries to purify them. The sequence was visceral, religious, and cruel. It was also removed entirely before theatrical release. The producers feared that beginning with animal suffering, even implied, would alienate audiences. Instead, the final cut opens with Jennifer arriving at a fancy prep school. Clean, safe, untrue. That lost intro didn't just show trauma. It explained it. Jennifer's powers, her hatred of hypocrisy, her moral compass, all traced back to that moment. Without it, the film feels like it's mimicking Carrie without earning its rage. Rumors say the intro was shot and scored, but never processed for final print. One assistant editor claimed he saw the rough cut, describing it as Southern Gothic nightmare meets religious horror. That version never made it past internal screenings. In a world of remakes and reboots, no one's tried to restore Jennifer. Maybe they don't believe it deserves a second look, but maybe they've never seen what it really was meant to be. Number 12. The Premonition, 1976. The Premonition exists in two realities, depending on where and when you saw it. The version aired on late-night television in the early 1980s opened with a disturbing scene of the foster mother, Sherry, staring into a mirror and whispering a child's name that isn't hers. It's slow, soft, and uncomfortable. In the theatrical cut, that intro is gone, replaced by a wide daylight shot of a school playground. Innocuous, forgettable. The lost intro wasn't graphic, it was psychological. Sherry's whispered words suggested a kind of spiritual possession, that her obsession with her adopted child might not be just maternal fear. It implied that someone else's trauma was leaking through her skin. Studio memos called the original opening too oblique and alienating. That's exactly what it was supposed to be. The film's power lies in unease, not exposition. Without that surreal intro, Sherry's descent into paranoia seems abrupt, even irrational. Those who saw the TV cut in real time still recall that opening. Some describe it as dreamlike. Others swear it never existed. No official release includes the mirror scene. No clip has surfaced. Only a shooting script and a single lobby card suggest it ever happened. It's not just a missing intro, it's a ghost in the film's DNA. Number 13, Let's Kill Uncle, 1966. Don't let the title fool you. Let's Kill Uncle was never meant to be quirky. In fact, its original intro was almost supernatural. Before the studio got involved, the film opened with a feverish dream. The boy protagonist watches his father's funeral, where no one casts a shadow. This scene, shot on an overexposed soundstage, with actors walking in unnatural slow motion, was reportedly too surreal for Universal at the time. It was cut after test screenings left audiences confused rather than intrigued. The studio replaced it with a straightforward exposition scene, the boy being informed of his inheritance and sent to the island. Clearer, yes, but also emptier. Without that dreamlike intro, the rest of the film loses its mythic edge. What could have been a fairy tale dipped in poison becomes a dark comedy with identity issues. And that's how it's remembered today, forgettable, tonally uneven. But the crew remembers differently. William Castle, the director, once said in a 1970 interview, "It was my most personal intro, but they made me kill it." There are rumors that the original intro still exists on a studio workprint, locked in Universal's vault. It's never been screened publicly. No stills, no footage, just one production photo, a pale child in funeral clothes staring into the camera, and no shadows behind him. Sometimes horror isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet and then taken away. Number 14, The Pix, 1973. The Pix is a mystery film, but only because someone made it one. In its original structure, the movie began with a scene showing Elizabeth Lucy, the doomed call girl, waking up and praying in Latin before leaving her apartment. The studio cut this entirely, choosing instead to open with her dead body falling from a building. Instant shock. But with it, all context died too. The original intro, described in early drafts and directors' interviews, was deliberately spiritual, not religious, but unsettling. Her prayer wasn't a confession, it was a warning. And it hinted that she knew what was coming, that she had chosen it. By removing that, the film becomes a puzzle, but not the kind its creator intended. What was meant as a slow, spiritual descent into occult manipulation became a cold forensic mystery. Many viewers miss the satanic undercurrent entirely, and those who catch it often feel like something is missing, because something is. Even the rhythm changed. The original intro led into the rest of the film in a non-linear structure, cutting between the detective's investigation and Elizabeth's final day. What we got instead was a linear narrative, far less unnerving. In recent years, fragments of the lost intro have surfaced online, scratched workprints and audio reels, but never the full version. Its absence lingers like the smoke in Elizabeth's final scene, heavy, unexplained, and impossible to ignore. The film died at the box office, maybe because it was too slow, or maybe because it was no longer itself. Number 15, Blood and Lace, 1971. Before slashers found their formula, Blood and Lace went somewhere colder. The film once opened with a slow pan through a burning house, where a child stood staring at two charred corpses, her parents. In the final cut, this sequence is gone, replaced with a quicker, more abstract prologue. Why? Because the original intro was deemed emotionally damaging during censorship review. Not for violence, but for tone. The lost opening showed no blood. It didn't need to. The horror was psychological, lingering in the child's frozen gaze. According to production notes, the full sequence was filmed but pulled just before theatrical distribution at the urging of theater owners. They feared walkouts. And not without reason, early test audiences reportedly went silent, not out of boredom, but paralysis. Without that intro, Blood and Lace still shocks, but it doesn't haunt. The theatrical version dives into exploitation and gothic tropes, but skips the slow descent into the girl's psyche. That original prologue framed everything differently. It made the violence feel cyclical, tragic, and worse, inevitable. Few prints of the original scene are rumored to exist. A crew member once claimed it was spliced onto a rare European copy, now lost in private collection. Whether that's true or not, one thing is clear: Blood and Lace was never meant to open gently. It wasn't just ahead of its time, it was too real for it. Bonus fact: Lamora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural, 1973. And before we reach the end, let's talk about a film whose missing intro was never just edited, it was condemned. Lamora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural is already a strange, dreamlike artifact. A gothic fairy tale dripping with religious anxiety and sexual repression, it tells the story of a young girl lured into a decaying vampire world. But the film was once more explicit in its allegory, and that's why the original intro never survived. According to both the original screenplay and on-set testimony, the first scene featured a Southern Baptist sermon. Not just fire and brimstone, but specific, angry condemnation of female desire. Intercut with that sermon, shots of young Lamora bathing in a creek, alone and afraid. Innocent, but observed. The juxtaposition was powerful and immediate. It framed the entire film as a battle between predatory judgment and awakening autonomy. But it also drew fire. Literally, the religious distributor originally attached to the film dropped it after seeing the scene. Negative reactions from early reviewers were vicious, blasphemous, one called it. The director was told that if the scene stayed in, the film would be banned outright in multiple southern states. So the intro was stripped, buried, lost. No footage survives, just stage directions, just memory, and just the echo of what Lamora might have been, not merely unsettling, but revolutionary. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing a horror film can do is begin with the truth. Lost intros are more than deleted scenes, they're erased intentions. They show us what a film wanted to be, before fear, pressure, or confusion stepped in. So now we ask you, which of these missing openings do you wish had survived? Which one changes the film most by being gone? Or better yet, have you seen any of these lost intros yourself? Let us know in the comments. And if you're brave enough, keep watching the beginnings they tried to make you forget.